The Air France hijack in Algeria. Shots are reported from inside the plane. More than 160 hostages have been held for 36 hours by Islamic militants who've already murdered 2 of the passengers. In Jerusalem, a massacre is narrowly averted as a Palestinian suicide bomber blows himself up at a bus stop. And praise for the peacemakers from the Queen in her Christmas message. Good evening. Rescue services are on maximum alert at Algiers airport, where Islamic militants are holding more than 160 people hostage on an Air France plane. Several shots have been heard tonight, and an unconfirmed report in the last few minutes says that a body has been thrown from the plane. The hijackers, who killed 2 hostages yesterday, have released at least 60 people.
At Algiers airport, another night of tension, with security hastily stepped up as more shots were reportedly heard inside the plane. On the surface then, no sign of a deal, but in the darkness the hijackers are still talking by radio to Algerian government negotiators. In Paris, ministers met to consider their limited range of options. Their offer to send a special forces unit seems to have been turned down by the Algerian authorities. Now, Foreign Minister Alain Juppé says the French will consider any plan which might avoid bloodshed, even perhaps allowing the plane to fly to France. For Prime Minister and undeclared presidential candidate Edouard Balladur, this is a crucial political test of nerve and judgment. He has returned to Paris from holiday to oversee the French response to the crisis. Kevin Connolly, BBC News, Paris.
The militant Islamic group Hamas says one of its members carried out this morning's suicide bomb attack in West Jerusalem. The bomb went off at a bus stop on a busy main road, killing the bomber and injuring 12 other people. The PLO has condemned the attack.
It was 6:10 in the morning and the explosion was clearly heard across Jerusalem. A Palestinian suicide bomber blew himself up at what in half an hour would have been a very busy bus stop. He tried and failed to get on a bus full of Air Force men. As it was, he killed only himself and wounded 12 bystanders. The bomber was from the Gaza Strip, and the effective second-in-command of Yasser Arafat's self-rule authority there was quick to condemn the attack.
It gives nothing but grief, and one very strongly condemns all action that leads to killing at a time when we are building peace for our 2 peoples.
The Islamic group Hamas admitted responsibility and boasted that the bomber breached Israeli security by getting out of Gaza and into Jerusalem past several checkposts without a permit. Reliable sources in Gaza say the man was a Palestinian traffic policeman with no record or previously known political involvement. Alex Brody, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Russia's Human Rights Commissioner has accused his government of lying over claims that Chechens are killing their own people. The Commissioner, Sergei Kovalyov, called on President Yeltsin to end the violence in the breakaway republic while there was still time. There are reports tonight that Russian warplanes have launched another bombing raid on the Chechen capital, Grozny.
Just a few hundred yards from the front line in Argun, Chechen fighters are still blocking the Russian advance. For 3 days, they've managed to hold this key town, which straddles the last main route into the capital. In Grozny overnight, Russian bombers hit the Chechen parliament building, immediately opposite the presidential palace of Dzhokhar Dudayev. The city has moved its children underground. The Russian air raids are so unpredictable now, they can't play outdoors. When the buses get through, parents ferry them out to safety across neighbouring borders. Even if Russian troops haven't encircled the Chechen capital, Grozny already feels like a city under blockade. Power supplies have been cut, and even simple tasks like collecting fresh water force these people to endure a primitive existence. Lawrence McDonnell, BBC News, on the Chechen border.
The Bosnian government has threatened to resume fighting because it claims its troops are being attacked around Bihać in the northwest of the country. The clashes have cast a shadow over the day-old ceasefire, which seems to be holding well in most areas. Our Foreign Affairs editor John Simpson reports from Sarajevo.
It's been the most peaceful Christmas day in this city since the siege began in 1992. Even so, people crossing the areas where snipers are active were still doing what's jokingly known as a Sarajevo shuffle. One man was shot in the leg. In a place like this, where so many ceasefires have been cynically broken, the occasional burst of gunfire means very little. In fact, there is now some reason to hope that this ceasefire might last. Today, as every day, the street children of Sarajevo have been out in force, begging for cigarettes and money. A city where so many people have died has a large number of orphans. And even children like these, in an orphanage which is nowadays well run with UN help, once had to forage for their own food and firewood. Several of the children here were abandoned by their parents when the bombardment of Sarajevo was at its height. By contrast, Samira's parents are both alive, the father badly injured, the mother driven insane by the bombing. Not much help gets through from abroad, according to the orphanage director. He finds it humiliating to receive old, shabby clothing. We may have bad times here, he says, but we also have our dignity. John Simpson, BBC News, Sarajevo.
The Queen, in her Christmas message, has said she'll pray for peace around the world, not least in Russia. Her Majesty paid tribute to peacemakers in Northern Ireland, South Africa and the Middle East, and said there were signs of a new dawn in the world, getting steadily stronger after a long night of bitterness.
The royal family is at Sandringham for a traditional Christmas. Prince Philip led his children and grandchildren on the short walk to church. The Queen and Queen Mother made the journey by car. In her broadcast, the Queen reflects on the year's events, like the D-Day commemorations in Normandy, which she says she'll never forget. Including specially shot pictures of the historic visit to Russia, she says she'd never thought it would be possible to attend a cathedral service in the Kremlin. And there's an apparent reference to conflict in Chechnya.
This Christmas, as we pray for peace at home and abroad, not least in Russia itself, we can also give thanks that such cathedrals and churches will be full, and that the great bells which greeted us will be ringing out to celebrate our Saviour's birth.
And she praises peacemakers.
This year we have seen shining examples of that generosity of spirit which alone can banish division and prejudice. In Northern Ireland, peace is gradually taking root. A fully democratic South Africa has been welcomed back into the Commonwealth. And in the Middle East, long-standing enmities are healing.
After church, the Queen Mother, one leg heavily bandaged, had difficulty with the steps. Over 2,000 well-wishers were outside, despite the cold, to exchange Christmas greetings. The Princess of Wales stayed overnight on Christmas Eve, but as last year, chose to leave Sandringham before lunch today. Princes William and Harry will remain there. Wesley Kerr, BBC News.
And more on tonight's main story. While we've been on the air, the French government has confirmed that Islamic militants who hijacked an Air France jet have killed a third hostage. Well, that's all tonight. Enjoy the rest of your Christmas. Good evening.
Good evening. We're in for a week of very unsettled weather. Just look how the cloud is starting to gang up on us out in the Atlantic, and that's going to bring some wind and rain with it. But at the moment, we've got a little bit of a clear slot across the British Isles. Temperatures are starting to tumble. Now, they're going to get low enough during the early part of the night for some local frost, so do watch out for some slippery surfaces tonight. Later in the night, though, we'll find cloud bringing showery rain into the west, and throughout the night, we'll continue to find wintry showers peppering Northern Ireland and Scotland. On Boxing Day then, the cloud and the rain gradually moving across from the west. Before the day's through, I think there could be quite a bit of snow up over the hills and mountains of Scotland, but this eastern side of England probably staying dry and bright for much of the day. Once again, a fairly mild day across southern parts of the British Isles, although it will be rather windy. The coldest weather up in the north, where we're going to find that snow. There's the summary for the week ahead, but that's all from me for now. Just to wish you a very Merry Christmas and good night.
Sounds appalling.
It may be impossible to choose your relatives, but you can always try to change them.
My dear Mary, you'll be glad to know my campaign for tidying up Cold Comfort Farm is going rather well.
We suppose I'm engorgingly in love with you.
Kate Beckinsale, Joanna Lumley, Stephen Fry, and Sir Ian McKellen join an all-star cast in the comic masterpiece Cold Comfort Farm. New Year's Day at 9:30 on BBC One.
He's got soul.
Steer it up, little darling. Steer it up. Come follow me now.
He's got rhythm.
We're gonna rock the house. We're gonna move the crowd. Say it loud, we're black, well, so proud.
He's got style.
Well, hello.
And he plays the ukulele.
Ding, 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 ding. Hey, Joe. Ring.
He is Lenny Henry, Wednesday at 9:15 on BBC One.
Out with the old and in with the new. Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd are trading places with a little help from Jamie Lee Curtis in tonight's late film here on BBC One at 11:30. Before that, something that no Christmas should be without. The Morecambe and Wise Show.